Behind the fame, there are secrets, struggles, and moments of pure movie magic that most people never knew about. Let's uncover the hidden gems of the 80s. Aliens, 1986, when James Cameron took over Ridley Scott's terrifying alien universe. Nobody expected he'd turn it into one of the greatest action movies ever made. Aliens wasn't just a sequel, it was a reinvention. But behind those pulse rifles and explosions are stories of exhaustion, innovation, and creative chaos that made it the masterpiece we know today. First off, Sigourney Weaver nearly didn't return as Ripley. She was busy with stage work, and the studio wasn't sure they wanted a female lead in an action movie. But Cameron fought hard for her, insisting Ripley was the heart of the story. Weaver finally agreed and earned an Oscar nomination for it, a rare feat for a sci-fi film. The movie was shot in England, but the British crew clashed with Cameron constantly. They didn't trust the young American director, especially one known for a low-budget film like The Terminator. Tension on set was real, and some crew members even walked off during production. The pulse rifles the Marines used? They were actually Thompson submachine guns combined with parts from shotguns and camera equipment. The futuristic look came from movie magic and clever prop design. Cameron wanted the weapons to feel heavy and industrial, like something soldiers would actually use. The famous "get away from her, you bitch" line? Sigourney came up with it herself after multiple takes. Cameron loved it instantly, and it became one of the most iconic lines in movie history. The alien queen, towering and terrifying, was a mechanical and puppeteering miracle. It took 16 operators to control her movements, every claw, every hiss, every tail strike. The creature looked so real that even on set, actors were genuinely scared to go near it. Carrie Henn, who played Newt, had never acted before. She was just a regular kid from an American military family living in England. Cameron cast her for her natural innocence, and she stole every scene. Even when filming ended, Sigourney stayed in touch with her for years like a real mentor. The alien nest scenes were filmed on huge sets made of foam and latex, so claustrophobic that the actors could barely breathe. The smoke and heat made it nearly unbearable, and you can see real sweat pouring off their faces. Fun fact, the iconic sound of the pulse rifle came from an actual recording of an M41A firing blanks, mixed with a whip crack and tiger roars. Cameron wanted every sound to feel alive. When Aliens hit theaters in 1986, it exploded both critically and commercially. It won Oscars for Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing and inspired countless imitators. But what makes Aliens timeless isn't just the creatures or explosions, it's Ripley's story. A woman facing her trauma, fighting her fears, and becoming something far greater than anyone expected. As Cameron said, it's not a movie about monsters. It's about motherhood, courage, and survival. Scarface, 1983. Few films define the 1980s quite like Scarface. Directed by Brian De Palma and written by Oliver Stone, it's the explosive story of Tony Montana, a Cuban immigrant who rises from nothing to become Miami's most feared drug lord. It's loud, violent, stylish, and unforgettable, but behind all the blood and power lies a story of controversy, chaos, and pure obsession that shaped one of cinema's most iconic legends. Al Pacino first got interested in Scarface after watching the 1932 original, a black and white gangster film. He thought it was the perfect story to bring into the modern world. When Oliver Stone came on board to write the script, he didn't hold back. Stone was battling his own cocaine addiction at the time and poured that darkness straight into the screenplay. He later said, "I had to leave the country to finish it, just to get clean." The movie was filmed mostly in Los Angeles, not Miami, because the city of Miami refused to cooperate. Local Cuban-American groups protested the film, accusing it of portraying immigrants as criminals. De Palma and his crew were even forced to flee Miami after receiving threats. Pacino's transformation into Tony Montana was intense. He studied real Cuban refugees in Florida to master the accent, posture, and attitude. He worked closely with dialect coach Robert Loggia and even watched documentaries on Fidel Castro's rise to power. But that raw energy came at a price during the famous chainsaw scene. Pacino accidentally burned his hand badly on a prop gun and couldn't use it for weeks. And speaking of that chainsaw scene, yes, it's real. Well, almost. They use a live chainsaw without the blade, and the actor being cut had a fake torso filled with blood packs and meat. The realism was so disturbing that the MPA demanded 30 cuts to avoid an X rating. Even after edits, it was one of the most violent mainstream films ever released at the time. The Say Hello to My Little Friend finale is pure cinematic gold. That massive shootout took 3 weeks to film. Pacino did most of his own stunts until he accidentally grabbed the hot barrel of his rifle and burned his hand again. But he refused to quit. That moment, that madness, was Tony Montana personified. Michelle Pfeiffer almost didn't get the role of Elvira. The studio didn't want her. She was too unknown, too fragile looking. But Pacino saw something in her audition, a coldness, a quiet danger. She got the part. It made her a star. Even the mansion interiors were built from scratch. The iconic "The World Is Yours" blimp, a miniature shot by hand. And that mountain of cocaine on Tony's desk, it wasn't real coke, it was powdered lactose. Still, Pacino said he sneezed white for days. When Scarface premiered, critics hated it. They called it excessive, vulgar, even a garbage opera. But over time, it became a cultural phenomenon, especially in hip-hop, where Tony Montana's rise from nothing symbolized ambition and rebellion. Today, Scarface stands as a brutal, beautiful portrait of the American dream gone wrong. It's not just about drugs or violence, it's about power, greed, and the price of wanting everything. As Oliver Stone once said, Scarface is about how America loves success even when it destroys you. The Karate Kid, 1984. When The Karate Kid hit theaters in 1984, no one expected it to become one of the most loved movies of the decade. It wasn't just a story about karate, it was about heart, discipline, and finding strength in unlikely places. Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi became timeless symbols of courage and mentorship, but behind this simple underdog tale are stories that make it even more special. The film was directed by John G. Avildsen, the same man who directed Rocky. He knew exactly how to tell a story about an ordinary kid who refuses to give up. Ralph Macchio, who played Daniel, was only 22 but looked like a teenager. He was chosen out of hundreds of actors because of his quiet sincerity and natural charm. And then came Pat Morita, the soul of the film. Most people knew him only as a comedian from TV, not as a wise, serious character. The studio didn't even want him. They thought he couldn't pull it off. But after his emotional audition, with that calm, gentle voice, everyone knew they had found their Mr. Miyagi. Morita added his own touches to the character, the broken English, the stillness, the humor. He even based Miyagi's accent on his uncle's. It was so authentic that he earned an Academy Award nomination, something few ever expected for a role like that. The famous wax-on, wax-off training scenes were almost cut from the script. Producers thought they were too slow, but Avildsen fought to keep them, saying they symbolized the heart of the movie: patience, balance, and trust. Those simple moves became part of pop culture forever. The chemistry between Macchio and Morita was real. Off-screen, they developed a true father and son bond. Morita once said, "Ralph was like my own kid." And after filming, they stayed close friends until Morita's death in 2005. Most of the fight scenes were done by the actors themselves, not stunt doubles. Ralph Macchio trained for months under professional karate teachers, and William Zabka, who played Johnny, had real martial arts experience. Despite being rivals on screen, the two became close friends during filming. The All Valley Tournament finale took 2 days to shoot. The crowd was made up of real extras who started cheering for Daniel for real, not because of direction, but because they got so caught up in the emotion. When Daniel lands that crane kick, the cheers you hear, 100% genuine. And that iconic move, the crane kick, almost didn't make it into the movie. The stunt team thought it looked too strange and unrealistic. But Avildsen loved the image of Daniel standing tall, one leg raised, facing his enemy with balance and belief. It became one of the most famous shots in movie history. Even the soundtrack had magic. "You're the best" was actually written for Rocky III but got rejected, only to find a perfect home in The Karate Kid. When the movie released, it became a surprise hit, inspiring millions around the world. Kids joined karate classes, adults cried at Miyagi's quiet wisdom, and everyone learned one powerful truth: that strength doesn't come from winning, but from never giving up. As Mr. Miyagi said, "Men who catch fly with chopstick accomplish anything." The Outsiders, 1983. Few movies capture the raw emotion of youth like The Outsiders. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola and based on S.E. Hinton's beloved novel, it's a story of friendship, loyalty, and class struggle of greasers and socks, of young hearts caught between violence and dreams. But behind the scenes, this quiet, emotional movie turned into a once-in-a-lifetime gathering of stars and a story as wild as the one on screen. It all started with a school librarian in Fresno, California. She and her students wrote to Coppola, begging him to adapt the novel into a movie. They even sent a petition signed by hundreds of kids. Coppola was so touched that he flew to the school, read the book, and said yes. That's how The Outsiders was born, not from Hollywood executives, but from the love of readers. The casting process was legendary. More than hundreds of young actors auditioned, many of whom would go on to become huge stars. Tom Cruise, Rob Lowe, Patrick Swayze, Emilio Estevez, Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, Diane Lane, and even a young Nicolas Cage all read for parts. Coppola filmed their auditions like a workshop, mixing and matching actors and scenes until the chemistry clicked. Coppola ran the set like a boot camp. He divided the cast into two groups, the greasers and the socks, and treated them completely differently. The greasers got old clothes, small dressing rooms, and cheap meals. The socks had fancy wardrobes and better catering. The idea was to make the rivalry feel real. It worked. The tension between the two groups on camera came straight from how they were treated off it. Ralph Macchio, who played Johnny Cade, was the emotional heart of the film. Before every emotional scene, he'd sit quietly and listen to sad music alone. The moment he said, "Stay gold, Pony Boy," there wasn't a dry eye on set, including Coppola's. Tom Cruise was still a newcomer, but his wild energy stood out. During one scene, he actually cracked a tooth while doing a stunt and refused to stop filming. Patrick Swayze became the cast's big brother, helping the younger actors stay grounded during the long shoot. S.E. Hinton herself was on set almost every day. She even appears briefly as a nurse in a hospital scene, watching her story come to life in front of her. The movie was filmed entirely in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the real novel takes place. Locals were so excited that entire neighborhoods volunteered to be extras. The Rumble scene, filmed in the rain, took 3 nights and hundreds of gallons of water to complete. By the end, everyone was soaked and freezing, but the result was electric. When The Outsiders came out, critics didn't know how to label it. Was it a teen movie? A drama? A tragedy? But over time, audiences connected deeply with its honesty and heart. It became more than a movie, it became a symbol of growing up, of standing by your friends, and of staying true to yourself when the world wants to tear you apart. As Pony Boy says, "Stay gold." That line, that message, still shines bright decades later, reminding everyone to hold on to their heart, no matter how rough the world gets. The Thing, 1982. John Carpenter's The Thing isn't just a horror movie, it's an experience in paranoia, fear, and isolation. When it first hit theaters in 1982, audiences didn't know what to make of it. Critics panned it, the box office bombed, and Carpenter's career took a hit. But over the years, it's been reborn as one of the greatest sci-fi horror films ever made, and behind the scenes, the story is just as chilling as what happens on screen. The film was shot in the freezing wilderness of British Columbia, where temperatures dropped below zero. The cast and crew were stuck in blizzards, working in knee-deep snow for hours every day. That brutal cold you see on screen, 100% real. Kurt Russell once said, "We weren't acting. We were just trying not to freeze." And speaking of Kurt Russell, his character, R.J. McCready, wasn't the studio's first choice. Carpenter originally wanted Jeff Bridges or even Nick Nolte, but Russell, who had worked with Carpenter before, brought a mix of toughness and quiet vulnerability that made the character unforgettable. The real star behind the scenes, though, was special effects wizard Rob Bottin. He was only 22 years old when he took on the challenge of bringing the alien creature to life, and he gave everything he had. He worked 7 days a week for over a year, barely sleeping, often staying at the studio. The stress became so intense that he was hospitalized with exhaustion and pneumonia by the end of production. But the results were revolutionary, all practical effects, no CGI, and still jaw-dropping decades later. The creature's transformations, the spider head, the chest bursting, the melting faces were all done with puppets, gels, and animatronics. Every sound effect was layered from strange sources, squishing vegetables, wet towels, and even melted bubblegum. Carpenter wanted the horror to feel tangible, something that crawled under your skin. Even the infamous blood test scene wasn't easy to film. Carpenter shot multiple versions of it, trying to figure out how to make audiences jump without using cheap tricks. The final version, with the needle dipping into the blood sample and it suddenly leaping to life, became one of the most perfectly timed scares in movie history. The tension between characters on screen, it wasn't all acting. The isolation and harsh conditions caused real friction among the cast. They were cold, tired, and constantly surrounded by artificial fog and fire effects. That quiet paranoia you feel watching the movie was exactly what the actors were feeling. And here's something wild: the movie's ending was intentionally left ambiguous. Carpenter wanted viewers to debate it forever. Who's human? Who's infected? Even the actors didn't know. Kurt Russell once admitted that he and co-star Keith David never got a clear answer, and Carpenter refuses to tell anyone. When The Thing came out, it was crushed by ET audiences wanted friendly aliens, not nightmare fuel. But time has been kind to it. Today, The Thing stands as a masterclass in suspense, atmosphere, and practical horror. It's not just a monster movie, it's a reflection of fear itself. Fear of the unknown, fear of the people around you, and fear of losing what makes you human. As Carpenter later said, The Thing isn't about the monster. It's about us and what we become when we stop trusting each other. And that's it for today's journey through the hidden gems of the 80s. These films remind us why the 80s will always be a golden era of cinema. If you enjoyed discovering the secrets behind these classics, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because in the next part, we're diving into even more legendary movies from the decade that changed Hollywood forever. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep your love for cinema alive.